All right. So, with that, I am Lauren Cook. I am your Dean of College and Gap Year Advising, and welcome this evening to our soft launch, our early start to the college search process for the class of 2028. I'm so glad you all are here this evening before school even starts. So, thank you for that. And I'll just start with a couple of housekeeping items. The default in my room is to be on mute, and I'll just ask you to stay on mute as I do a little content up top. I've got 10 or 15 minutes worth of some things to talk to you about and some slides here. And then when I'm done with that, you can put questions in the chat. You can raise your Zoom hand. I'll stop sharing the screen, and however you want to ask any questions, we'll do for the balance of the time. And while the process won't formally start in a one-on-one manner until December 2nd, that is our big launch date, which will also be on Zoom and recorded and all the rest, I found that this quick touch base in the fall is helpful for everyone. So we all feel like we know what direction we're headed in for the fall and what to expect in the next few months. So our agenda, let me make sure that, yeah, there we go, is basically to be proactive about some of the frequently asked questions that I get at this time of year. So we're going to talk about some of the first things to think about this fall and where we are in the process. We're going to talk specifically about college visits to JCHS because we do have college reps that are busily booking visits to come talk to all of you. We're going to go over not everything testing, but everything you need to know in this moment about things related to the ACT and the SAT. Oh, and then we're going to talk about a couple of fall events to think about having on your calendar. I'll do a quick recap of the couple of to-dos that you might want to be thinking about in the next few weeks, and then we will go ahead and open things up for questions. So that's that. And know that if you have a bunch of questions, we will have a hard stop at 7:30, knowing that we've got the next 2 years to keep asking questions and answering them and all the rest. But if you run out of questions and we wrap earlier than that, great. And I am recording. Be on your best behavior. And I will send out a copy of this later in the week. So if you do have to log off at some point, or if your child or parent is not able to be here this evening, there will be a copy of it if you want to watch. So with that, we'll just start talking about the process writ large and planning for life post JCHS, which I know may feel crazy, students, because you're literally just halfway through. But the second half of your time at JCHS, we do want to start thinking about what's going to come next. And this is really the start of a long-term project. So if you're feeling not ready for this, that's okay. Nothing's happening, immediately. But this thought process as we start generating some ideas. We want to start envisioning the next phase of your life and start finding some options that will fit that vision. And I want to just sort of pull over for a second and say there are many options for life post JCHS. We do have alumni that are at community colleges in the IDF, they're engaging in gap year programs, but the majority during senior year are applying to four-year colleges. That is the most complicated process. And so it takes planning, and we want to get started on that now. So that's why that's sort of the focus of this evening and a lot of our college advising conversations this year. You're going to start by doing some independent exploration over the next 2-3 months through some of the search tools available on SCORE, through some of the college visits that are going to be happening at JCHS this fall. You might be planning to do a couple of tours as a family and just start to see some things that are out there. And then when we get to December 2nd, which is a Wednesday evening, that will be sort of the official launch of things. And right after that meeting, everybody's going to start getting questionnaires that I want you to fill out. We'll start having one-on-one meetings. So if you're eager right now and kind of chomping at the bit to get going, know that very soon you will not be able to escape me. So appreciate the sort of soft launch as we're going through things over the next few months. For now, I would ask that we limit any requests for personal one-on-one appointments, in the next couple of weeks, because the seniors really need to be my total focus. November 1st is usually the first college application deadline in the fall, and so it's a big push to get them ready and start to get those applications out the door. And then I'm able to breathe a little bit more and start thinking about layering the juniors in as well. But for now, know that I'm happy to answer questions via email as stuff comes up. Juniors, I hope if we haven't chatted before, you'll swing by my office and say hi so that we can start to get to know each other. I'm assuming I'll see many of you at college visits and start to understand the questions that you may have and the places that you might be thinking about. And I will be in your class meeting this Thursday, which you may or may not even know that you have. But after our first Hakel, we'll have a class meeting and talk a little bit more then. So let's talk for a second about what is a college visit to JCHS. We typically have about 75 some colleges that come, they make appointments and come visit the school. They will be starting the second full week of school. So on September 2nd, which is a Wednesday, they are always in room 120, which is right off of the front lobby. It's right by the front door. You might have had a tefillah in that room before. And these are 30-minute appointments that they make. They are open to both 11th and 12th graders. And the colleges do a little overview. They might have like a PowerPoint presentation and some photos and pictures. Some just might be more discussion based, and they usually leave some time for questions. You do need to register for these. And if you're in a study hall, that's fine. You don't have to like ask anyone's permission. But if you are in class at that point, and these are usually the first 30 minutes of class or the last 30 minutes of class, you need to ask your teacher for permission to leave 24 hours in advance. And that can be just shooting them an email, if it's a Monday appointment, sending them something on Sunday. What we don't want to do is show up for class, say, oh my gosh, I forgot Chapman is here, I gotta go. They have every right to tell you you cannot leave at that point. But if you give them some heads up, then you should be able to attend these visits. And these are all listed in SCORE. So if you've registered for SCORE, and I think there's still 5 or 6 of you that are not quite in there yet, but when you're on your landing page, right-hand navigation, just scroll down, it's under deadlines and registered visits, and there's literally a blue button next to the college's name saying register. You just click it and you're in the loop for that. SCORE will send an auto reminder to you the day before about the college visit. So if something comes up and you end up not being able to go, you'll get that reminder. You can unregister yourself. But it's helpful for me and the rep to know if we've got folks that are coming and how many. Know that I'll always be in these visits, and so you don't have to worry about sort of being prepared or having any questions or anything. This is a moment to just explore, and I'd encourage you to try going to a couple different types of colleges. So a small liberal arts college, a big university, some in-state, some out of state. Even if you think you know where you want to go, I would still give yourself some exposure to different types of places. And if you have no idea, that's okay. You're literally shopping this fall and just checking things out. I will also just say that it goes without saying that students attending should be ready for college business, right? So bring your best selves to these meetings. You are representing JCHS. I do have a kind of zero tolerance policy for shenanigans. So if there is some bad behavior during a visit, this is kind of a one strike and you're out situation. You will lose the privilege of attending these visits and missing class in the fall. So if you come to a visit, I want you to be locked in, ready to go, and you'll be all set. All right. Now, this is not everyone's favorite topic, but we do need to talk a bit about testing, and things are a little different from past years. So, and it's what I'm getting some of the most questions about currently. I feel like folks often think this is something they need to get on right at the beginning of junior year. And I've got some advice on that. But I'll start by saying to parents, know that the role of testing in college admission has changed quite a bit since you were applying, since I was applying, and maybe even since you might have had an older child applying, because this landscape has been evolving quite a bit over the last 15 years. So when I talk about testing, I'm talking about the ACT and the SAT. These are the two major standardized tests. All colleges accept both, and students do not need to take both. But typically we want to figure out if one is better for you than another. When I talk about the changing landscape, there has been a lot of skepticism in the recent years about the quality of these tests. There were mass disruptions to testing and availability of it and even safety of it during the pandemic. And so in the couple of years since the pandemic, policies, things have been sort of changing and evolving, and I'm always trying to stay on top of this. It is a little chaotic. And so where we are right now, this is the current landscape. So there are some places that are requiring testing. highly selective institutions, and by this I mean like the Ivy institutions and some of the Ivy plus schools, the places that have a 5% admit rate, most of those have gone back to requiring you to have a test score to apply. Service academies, if you're thinking about West Point, Air Force Academy, they want a test score. There are some southern states, so if you're looking at, say, the University of Florida or Georgia, where their public institutions never went test optional. Their legislatures control that, and so they have been requiring test scores all the way along. And then many international institutions. So if you're kind of thinking, I might want to look in Canada or the UK or Israel, those are some of the most popular destinations. They usually want some scores, some metrics as well. Sometimes AP test scores work, but otherwise they want an ACT or an SAT. Otherwise, most other US colleges and universities are test optional and have remained that way. And many have made statements saying we're permanently staying test optional. So that's the biggest category in this moment. Then there's also test free, meaning they won't even look, they don't even ask for your ACT or SAT. And right now, that includes the University of California system, the California State University, so all of our public institutions in California, and then 46 other institutions. These are a range of smaller colleges, but some are Pitzer, University of San Diego, some other California colleges. There's an organization called fairtest.org that tracks all of these testing policies. So if you're really curious about those 46, you can go take a look there. Okay, so this is what's currently happening as of August 2026. That said, there's been a lot of press that perhaps some parents have been locked into, if not some kids, over the last few months about a potential return of testing to the UC system. They're currently engaged in a review process over the next year, and I've been talking with some of my UC colleagues to get sort of the internal scoop on what's happening. And if there is a policy change at the earliest, it would unfortunately be effective with your class, with the class of 2028. So what does this mean? What do you do? Let me advance my next slide. There we go. So I think my advice, if I've worked with an older child of yours, note that this is a change from past years, that I do think everyone needs to plan to pursue some testing. The past few years, we've been able to talk about if you do testing, when you do it, and then do we submit it. I do think, given the potential, however slight it might be, that the UCs and or the CSUs go back to needing some kind of testing. Smart money says to have a score in your back pocket, right? So we want everyone to be thinking about preparing for a test. And then we'll decide later on, once we've got a score, are we actually submitting this? What's on your list? Do they need it? And what kind of score do they need? So how do you do this? JCHS has a whole practice test schedule set up for you. There's nothing you need to do in this moment. Know that we will have a PSAT on October 5th, which all of you or most of you probably took last year as sophomores. We'll do that again this year. It's school day testing. You'll get information from Ms. Bregman probably soon about it. I also then hold a practice ACT for the junior class. It's run by a test prep group called Compass Education. They do it online. It's proctored. It's available the whole day on November 8th. So say you're in the play, you've got rehearsal, don't worry about it. You can work around your schedule. I highly recommend you do these practice tests because we want to see, do you need to take an ACT or an SAT? Because some kids do better on one over another. But there's really no need for test prep this fall. And I will say, I know there's a handful of exceptions of you out there, and we've already had some conversations about if you're going to do sort of an earlier testing cycle. But most students do not need to be taking a test on the record this fall, and they don't need to be doing test prep. And in many ways, it's not even curricularly appropriate, depending on what both your math and English classes are this year. You're going to be still learning some of the content that you will be tested on these tests, ideally in this coming spring. After the launch on December 2nd, we will start unpacking your practice test scores, or we might do this over email, decide which test is best for you, and then set a game plan for the spring. And most students will take their first test in junior year, somewhere between March and June. And it kind of depends, folks who are getting lower scores on those practice tests, we want to give you a longer runway for that curricular content, do some test prep. If you're getting some relatively high or high-ish test scores on those practice tests this fall, we might be able to have a little bit more of a compressed schedule. But this is not a one-size-fits-all situation, so know that we'll be doing individual conversations student by student about this. Okay, I know this is so much detail and I'm so sorry, but we will just have a little bit more to go over here. I will say, given all of this advice I've just said, one more nuance, test registration sittings, like actually being able to register for a test in the Bay Area in the spring, have been weirdly competitive the past few years. The demand is outweighing the supply. So I am strangely going to recommend that in the next few days, you actually proactively schedule both an ACT and an SAT test in the spring. Anywhere between March and June, you probably want to look at your calendar, see when the journeys are, AP testing, all of that. So you've got something booked. And then you can always cancel, you can always move it around. But we've had juniors this past year that were going to Stockton and Fresno and other places to take a test because there wasn't something available in Berkeley or San Francisco or whatnot. So I would think about proactively scheduling that. I'm sorry that that's the case with where we are, but these testing companies drive me a little crazy. If you have testing accommodations, know that you can just check off taking the test with accommodations on the registration, and that will actually ping Dr. Neufeld, and he will follow up with you just to make sure we've got all the paperwork we need to make sure you have those accommodations. Many of you have them with College Board, but some of you might need to get them with ACT. Okay, I know this is so boring. Thank you for hanging in there. We're going to move off of testing now. Oh, except to say, if this is overwhelming or you want more information, you want this slower, in-depth, extra stuff, know that Compass does monthly webinars that are just kind of like the State of the Union this month with testing, because again, these policies keep changing. So if you go to just compassprep.com/webinars, then you can see when their next one is coming up or watch a recording from last month. But I think that they're really good on this information. And even though they're a national company, they're based in Marin. So they're actually really on top of what's happening with the UCs. So they're a great source of information. Okay, moving away from testing, just a couple reminders here on fall events. So as I just said, October 5th, it's a Monday, PSAT. You will all be funneled right into that. November 8th, practice ACT. I will send you more information about that about 6 weeks in advance. And then December 2nd, we will have the kickoff of the whole legit college process. And I will send you lots of information about that. And then I also just want to remind you that in parallel to some of the events that I am specifically holding, we have our friends at College Money Method doing some workshops on paying for college, which is also a huge topic. And I have an email lined up that's going to all of you tomorrow morning with more College Money Method information. If you guys went to anything last year for sophomore families, you know that Paul Martin is great. He has done a total redesign of the school resource page website that we have, video recordings, all of that. So more information will be in your inbox in the morning. But if you haven't engaged with any College Money Method and you have no idea what I'm talking about, note that on 11/16, he's doing his basic sort of like introduction to financing your college education. On his website, it says it's geared towards ninth grade families, but anyone is welcome if you haven't engaged with any of the websites before. It's just giving you a sort of understanding of the lingo and the things that will be expected of you. And then the next one specifically for junior families and senior families is understanding some of the stuff around loans and borrowing, and that is on December 1st. He always records these, so you don't have to watch them live. But when you do, he can answer questions live for you. He's terrific. And he does have a suite of 6 different workshops for where you are in the process. But these are the 2 that might be specific and of interest to you this fall. Okay. So let's do a quick recap of what you might want to do in the next few weeks. Students, register for some JCHS college visits. Again, go to SCORE, click down that right-hand navigation, and just press the register button for anything that sounds interesting. We want to think about booking an ACT and an SAT sitting for the spring. Again, you're not going to have to use both of those, but we want to make sure you've got a place saved for you to make things easy given the current state of the union. I'm going to just recommend, and this is where Miss Hunt can be helpful perhaps, and drop the link in the chat, to look through the College Advising Handbook. You don't have to sit down and read all 30 pages, but it is blocked into some sections. So if you want to read just about campus visits or just about score, or you're curious about more information on testing, there's a lot of good data in there. And students, I will also just note, there's a new section as of this year on some like personality quizzes and career assessments. And so if you are not quite sure what your future might hold, college majors, all of that, which is fine, you don't have to know. But you can take some of those quizzes and start thinking about where's my skill set, where are my interests, what might be a good path for me to be thinking about. And then, of course, again, students, please stop by my office and say hi. If you don't know where I am, when you walk in the front door, you see those college pennants all the way down at the end of the hallway. I'm right there. So just follow the yellow brick road to the pennants. Okay, and so with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen. I see there's a lot in the chat. So I am going to just start with the chat questions, and then if anyone wants to talk live, you can raise your Zoom hand and we'll go to those, or you can keep adding to the chat. But the first question was around, will this recording be available for those who are unable to attend? Absolutely, I will send it later this week. Yes, and so also the PSAT, I'm assuming that means I'm taking both practice tests. And so yes, we want you to do a PSAT and an ACT. I will tell you they're different tests. The timing's not dissimilar at this point, but they do kind of structure themselves differently. The scoring's a little different. And I do find, especially for students who find some of the STEM fields, math in particular, a little tricky, the ACT can sometimes be a better test for you because it is a smaller amount of the total overall score. I will also say the ACT is a little more geometric, the SAT is more algebraic. So it's important to take both and see if you naturally are doing better on one than the other. And so we want to just start with that one that's working better for you. Question about, does IDF require testing? That's a great question. I don't think so. I think there you might be getting a little bit more into it's about Hebrew knowledge, but there is ideally, if you're going to do the Lone Soldier program, maybe sign up with a Mahina, which is the pre-Army prep program for 6 months. There is some Hebrew training as part of that as well, but I don't think that you need test scores for that. Sometimes those students do still want to, while they're on the same track with their peers, thinking that college might come after service, to take a test, at least in senior year, because they're good usually for 5 years before that score kind of expires. So, and more Israeli colleges are moving back to requiring some kind of testing. There's a question saying, I recall you mentioned that getting a place seat for the SAT is difficult in the Bay Area. Sign up right away. Yes, that is still, yes, great. I did answer that. Please sign up. Does the 10.5 PSAT count for the National Merit Scholarship? It sure does. So for folks who are not familiar with National Merit, it is something that, and I will just say parents, quite frankly, was a bigger deal when we were applying to college, mostly because the money was more associated with it. So National Merit is an organization that's national, and based on the test scores that you get on the PSAT in 11th grade, you may qualify to be what they call a National Merit semifinalist. This is an award you can put on your college applications, which is great. Some subset of those semifinalists obviously go on to become finalists. And if you become a finalist, there is some money available to you, a scholarship for college. It is right now about $2,000. And it is not the same sort of shine on it in terms of the award bit on your application as it might have been 20 years ago. But all of that said, it can still be a nice feather in your cap. And with it as expensive as college is, every amount off the bill is helpful. So know that yes, this is the qualifying year for national merit. And that's just effective with the PSAT. That's something that is a sort of college board thing only, not the ACT. All right. Thank you, Ms. Hunt, for putting the handbook link in. There is also a question about, is it hard to register for Sunday exam dates? Thank you so much. I should have brought up Sunday. So I will tell you that yes, if you honor Shabbat, you do not have to take the test on a Saturday. What you will do with, I believe, both College Board and ACT now, although they, are always changing their systems. Usually when you go to register, you want to start by clicking the weekend that works for you with the associated Saturday. So you're going to click like you're registering for a Saturday, but then it's going to ask you if you want to have Sunday testing available, and you click yes for that. Most of the time, they want some kind of verification that you're Jewish, which is weird. But let me know if you need that, because I have a stock letter from Rabbi Rubin that says, you observe Jewish laws around Shabbat, and, please give you every consideration with taking a Sunday test. It's a quick PDF I can mail you or email you, and then you upload as part of the registration, and you should be booked for a Sunday. Those are also a little harder to come by. I would still try and do some registration now for a Sunday date. Less because they're so clamored for, but just because there are even fewer seats for those, because only a handful of sites will offer Sunday testing. Know that to also help with this, we generally, so on this October 5th date at school this fall to do the PSAT, seniors also have the option to take an actual SAT at school, so it doesn't have to be on a Sunday. And this year, for the first time, we're also offering an ACT on that same day because of all these sitting shenanigans. So know that that will be in the mix as one option for you in senior year. But otherwise, you do want to be looking for those Sunday seats. Also a question about if the kid has already done practice exams through Compass, should they still take both practice exams at school? You don't have to. I would say maybe take the PSAT if you're interested in the national merit qualifying situation. But if you've already done some of these diagnostic tests with a test prep company and they've given you some advice about which test to run with, then great. You don't have to engage with all of this. And I know that may be the case for a few of you, but again, the vast majority of you, I think, are just getting started with this, and that's fine too. You are not behind. Okay, question saying, I tried signing up for the Sunday test for my older daughter. We submitted a letter from our rabbi. Great, but the location of the Sunday test is so far and inconvenient. Can you speak about that? Such a bummer. I'm so sorry. And this past spring, I really went full bore at ACT and College Board, being a squeaky little Karen on my emails and phone calls about trying to complain with them, both with just the shortage of test sittings in general, but also with Sundays. And these are big bureaucratic organizations that honestly don't really care. But I know that there are lots of college counselors complaining about this, especially from the Bay Area. I'm part of a group of independent counselors in the Bay Area. We have a listserv, and we have been trying to unite forces and funnel our complaints together so that they understand that there's a big group of schools that are pretty unhappy. So stay tuned on things, but the pessimist in me doesn't think that a lot is going to change this year. So we'll see. I do think one of the weird silver linings to if the UCs or CSUs go back to requiring testing is that more seats may open up, because I do think fewer high schools are offering tests now than before the pandemic, because it's not required in our state, right? So I do think supply and demand might get a little less out of whack if it becomes required here again. Okay, another question. What kind of preparation do you recommend for the practice tests and for the tests in March, June? You don't need to do any preparation for the practice tests. These are literally practice. The scores, unless you're a real high flying, person with the national merit stuff, don't go anywhere. They are for your use as a family and my use as your college counselor to help start seeing like which test might be better for you, where are the scores at, where do we feel like we want to go. what list of schools are you looking at? And I do think that there will be some of you for whom the schools you're looking at are all test optional, and we might be able, to get off the testing train then. But for most of you, we will then start thinking in December and January about some test prep options. And you have lots of options, everything from free stuff. Like College Board has an agreement with Khan Academy online where you can do some test prep just for free on your own, through things that cost thousands of dollars, which I'm not a huge fan of. And studies show that sort of the more money you throw at test prep, the higher your test scores can be, which is why so many places are test optional at this point. But we can talk about what your family might need in particular. I do have a lot of happy students that work with Compass, that work with Revolution Prep. That's another big test prep company. And then there's lots and lots of smaller, tutors and folks that you can work with. And things these days, they can be online, they can be in person, it can be a class, it can be one-on-one. But test prep should absolutely not become an extracurricular activity that you're doing around the clock. Students, you will get tired of this, you will burn out. So I usually want to think about it as a strategic, laser focused thing we're doing 6 to 8 weeks before you take a test. So once you got a test date, then you're kind of looking at the calendar and going backwards in time from there to plan out what you want to do. And test prep looks like some content stuff, just reviewing your algebra, reviewing your, English terminology and all of that, along with practice tests, because this is equal parts content knowledge and then just being in the testing zone, right? And getting some of the nerves out, getting used to the timing of it, starting to try and feel comfortable with the rhythm of that particular test. So then you're not panicked when you go in and sit down to take it for the first time. It feels familiar. What is Compass? Yeah, so Compass Education Group is one of many test prep companies. I will say they're kind of expensive, so it's not going to be the right fit for everybody, but they offer a lot of free services to us, so we take them up on that. And one, are the webinars that they've got online just to talk to you about the state of college testing. Another is they sponsor our free practice ACT. And everyone who works there are actually good friends of mine for many years, and they're really good ethical players in the field here and are really on the side of students and trying to help you get through this process with as little stress as possible. So I think Compass is terrific. Please share links to the SAT and ACT testing registration. Yeah, I will say you can just Google literally ACT registration and it should come up SAT registration, but I will send links out in emails as things come up. Okay. Wow. Okay, we've run out of chat questions. Thank you all for continuing to hang in. We've got another one. What does your ACT and SAT score show about you from the perspective of colleges? Do they define your skills? What a great question, Zev. No, they don't define all your skills. And so I will tell you, we're spending a lot of time on testing here right now, and there's reasons, right? We've got some minutia that we've got to take care of. But when we step back and talk about the college process search in general, testing overall, even if it's required by a school, is playing a much smaller role than it might have done 20 or 30 years ago because they realize that there are some flaws with these tests. They test some things, they don't test other things. Your creativity, your drive, your persistence, that's not standardized, and it's not as something that you can sort of bubble in on a test. So they have a place. And if you are particularly thinking about STEM majors, those are places where they've leaned back into test scores because they do need to know what your math skills might look like. And there are some places where it is important to understand in a data place where you are. But for a lot of other pathways and college majors, the testing is really irrelevant. And in fact, if you're thinking about something in an arts related field, for example, it's much more important that a portfolio, it's a skills based situation, it's a talent based situation. A lot of musical theater programs or visual art programs don't care about test scores. So it really is going to also depend on each individual student's path, trajectory, interests. What are most important? Your transcript, what you've done over 4 years at JCHS, and grades, yes, but the classes too. What have you engaged with? What are you interested in? What are you curious about? By senior year, have you engaged with some rigor in some things? That could be going to, Hebrew 7 or 8. That could be going to AP English Lit. That could be, AP Calc BC. It doesn't mean you have to do all of those things, right? But what you're saying you might be interested in, they want to see on the transcript if it echoes that, right? And we do have some students that are high achieving generalists, and that's fine too. But your transcript is always sort of the grounding piece of your application. They ask for some writing. They typically ask to hear from some teachers and from me and recommendation letters. And they look to see what you're engaged in outside of class. So there's always a list of extracurricular activities. And if you've got leadership roles and, what takes up your time and what are you curious about when you're not sitting in a class at JCHS. And then things like testing, maybe doing an interview, maybe having a portfolio, all of those things that may be optional at some institutions sort of round out the picture. But the real meat and potatoes of your application is that transcript, the writing, the activities, and usually your recommendations. All right. What else? Anything else that is coming up for folks? Yeah, Joe Ellen, if you want to take yourself off mute, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you for reminding me that. Um, I am sorry to keep, I'm focused on testing just
Of
because it's like
course.
a deadline driven thing.
Yep.
Appears as if the latest test that we can register for right now is December 5th,
I love this for the SAT or the
for
ACT.
the SAT.
Great. Actually, that's perfect. And thank you. And you can scrap my advice for signing up right now because it's not open. And maybe this is one way they're also trying to mitigate the crazy situation that we had last year, that they'll open it up later.
So I have a follow-up question on this because I'm focusing all of my anxiety on this just because it's one thing to focus on.
Love it.
Um, the it seems as if the student themselves has to register for the exam through their own College Board account rather than the parent. Do you
Yep.
have advice for how to navigate this for so that I do not want to rely on my child to register
Yeah,
themselves?
I think you should. And this will be sort of some larger college search advice as well. I think you might want to set up an appointment with your child to sit down and do it together. I am going to, for the sake of our students who don't want to talk about college all the time, just encourage generally that we maybe have a once a week college appointment, maybe once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks in the beginning of junior year here, where maybe like Sunday night, we just check in on some college things, and that might be when, if we need to sit down and do something together, we do something together. So please, parents, try to not make this an every night at dinner conversation because that's a quick way to need me to step in and start refereeing my senior year. But yes, I would try and set up a time to do that together. And there will be a couple of things along the way that you need to do together. Another that the seniors are doing right now is they're starting to actually fill out their applications. There's a big section on your parents and asking you, like, where did your parent go to college? What's their job title? Most kids don't have their parents' resume memorized. So sitting down to do that together can be appointment television. So yeah, I would sit down and do it together. And yes, thank you for noting that you do have to go through the Students College Board account. And some of that will be true with financial aid forms as well, because some financial aid things they're in your name, students, because you eventually, if you're taking out a loan or whatnot, it's you paying it back, not the parents. But we don't expect you to also know how to like navigate financial paperwork as a 17 or 18-year-old. So sitting down and doing that with your parents will also be helpful. All right. This has been so much. I hope everyone is still breathing. I want you to know that generally we try and have a culture of sanity around college at JCHS. We try and concentrate on the next couple steps that are just in front of us. Don't try and think about the whole picture. That is my job, not yours, to hold that in this moment. But is there anything else we are thinking about as we approach the first day of school, some of those first college visits? Anything else? All right. Well, oh, any advice about when to go see schools? Great question. I will say right now, this can be a great thing to think about if you've got a family wedding or bar mitzvah, or you're going on vacation, just to look and see, like, is there college around there? I do this all the time because, of course, it's my job. But just to go, even if you're just standing on a college campus somewhere to get the aesthetics of it and see what it looks like. But at best, you're signing up for the introductory little tour and information session package, which is often like a 90-minute to 2 hour situation. And I would say anytime this year is a good time to just start dabbling a little bit. And you don't have to go far. I would say it's most easy to, go pop over to Davis or UC Santa Cruz or Berkeley just to look at a UC campus. They can kind of stand in for one another. You could take a formal tour at USF, at St. Mary's, at Stanford to stand in for small private college, urban college campus, and just start to see vibes and get preferences to things. Um, and I would say, school breaks are good. Really, Pesach break in the spring is a popular time for folks to really go in on trying to see a few campuses. Over the summer is great too. While you don't always have like bustling student life, if you're trying to see things on the East Coast or the South or somewhere further away, everybody's offering tours with current students during the summer, so that's totally fine. I did a round of college tours in Colorado in June, talked to a lot of great students. And again, College Advising Handbook has 2 pages on campus visits and how to make the most of that, things to do and see. AP tests, when can they be retaken? Typically, AP tests are not retaken unless you missed one because you were sick. So let's say you took AP or you're taking AP Lang junior year, you have the date to take it with your classmates. If you're sick or out of school, there is a, makeup date later that month. And then that's it. Then we're done with the AP test for that particular class. So it's really kind of done in the year in which you had the class. But also know that AP test scores can be helpful, but they're not required necessarily. Both in terms of thinking that you actually took the test. Not everybody takes the test when they take the class. And typically for college admission purposes, we just try and submit scores of 4 or 5. Those are the most impressive. If you have something under that, we can leave it off. Not a big deal. No one's going to ask what happened. And you might still get college credit. That's a different process. Okay, question about for spring test registration. Since spring date aren't open soon, will you be checking in to let us know? Yes. I would say so. Should we be checking frequently on our own? Yes. Will I let you know as soon as I hear that it opens up? Yes. So I would say let's both be keeping an eye on this. Generally, my college counselor listservs ping me as soon as it's up, saying it's up, go send your kids there. So I will send something out to the class as soon as I hear, but you should also be proactively checking too, because again, these test prep companies are chaotic and erratic, and I'm sorry for that. Another question, Zevi, do the students still work on a first draft of their Common App essay at the end of junior year? They sure do. Miss Foth is teaching all of you this year. That was the case last year, and that was actually amazing because the results this year of having the same teacher across all the classes have been really good. And we'll talk more about that. It's literally the last thing in your English classes, whether you're in AP Lang or at level English. So we have many moons to go before we get there, but know that you will go into the summer having a draft of your college essay. We may keep it, we may polish it, that may polish it up, that may be what you submit. You may hate it, you may trash it afterwards, and we start over next summer. That's fine too. But we will go through with some guidelines, guardrails, and help starting that first college writing. All right. Great. Thank you for all the thank yous. It is my pleasure. I love my job. I love working with all of you. Okay. So we're going to call it here. 7:15. Students, if you have more questions, know that I'll see you on Thursday for the grade meeting, but we're not going to talk about it too much because this has been a lot. I will send out a recording, and I hope that folks will swing by my office and say hi. Parents, if you have any questions, let me know. College Money Method email coming tomorrow, recording of this coming later, and I hope that you enjoy one more day of summer before we lock in and do the school year. So have a good evening, everyone. Bye.